this morning we have two dear friends. One of them is Mary Berry, Executive Director of the Berry Center, who really needs no introduction. Her home place is Henry County, Kentucky, but in spirit and in friendship, she certainly has roots here in Saline County, so we're happy to have her here. And she's joined by Matthew Derr, who's president of Sterling College. Sterling's the new home of the berry farming program, and President Derr led the effort to divest the Sterling Endowment from fossil fuels. Round of applause. He founded the Freed Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems, and together with Mary and others, recently launched an effort with the Berry Center to expand the reach of their farm education program. I am so excited to hear more, and so without further ado, I welcome to the stage Mary and Matthew.
Thank you, Rachel. Am I starting, Matthew?
You are.
This is supposed to be a conversation, so I'm going to start by saying to Matthew, because he has never been to a Prairie Festival before, and I'm a generational attender of the Prairie Festival, that I've heard Ann sing for many years, since I was a young woman, but I've never had to follow her before. So thank you, Ann, sort of.
We won't sing.
We won't sing. I also, the last time I was here, I introduced my father to the crowd at the Prairie Festival, and this year I want to introduce my mother to the Prairie Festival. My mother, Tanya Berry, is right over here. Wave, Mom. And surprise, you now have to give a speech. Okay. All right. Well, maybe not. It's my pleasure always to be at the Land Institute. I'm so glad to be with my friends here, with Wes and Joan. Thank you, Fred, for inviting us, and I'm so glad to see all of you. Matthew and I are going to give a little bit of background about our two, you have an institution, I have a center. And we're going to give you a little backstory about those two, the places that we work, and then talk a little about what we're doing together. My home is farm country in north central Kentucky. I have lived and farmed there all my life, first by birth and then by choice. My great-grandfather said after the first and only trip he ever took in his life, "I didn't see anything I liked better than the field behind my barn." I am his true heir. While I am grateful for the traveling I have done and the places that I've seen, nothing has tempted me away from the beautiful, maybe unremarkable, and now threatened landscape of my home country. Even now, when this country so familiar to me is also strange to me, it remains the only place I want to live. I know that it is strange to my husband, a lifelong farmer and a descendant of generations of farmers. I know from my father's writing and my daily conversations with both my parents that they feel the strangeness of it every day. Farmland and farming communities all over this country are in decline or have been swallowed up by our industrial economy. In that, we are tragically the same as other rural places all over the United States. A difference in my place is that our decline can be directly tied to the loss of the Burley Tobacco Program. The program ended in 2004, which gives us 14 years to see what happens to a farm culture when its economy is removed. The Burley Tobacco Program defended a crop that turned out to be indefensible, and so, I believe, the program and its principles have been quickly forgotten. It was the only farm program, a price support, never a subsidy, that served the people it was supposed to serve, the small family farmers. Because it limited production of a high-value crop, it protected farmers and the farms from overproduction and encouraged a pretty highly diversified farm economy from 1941 until the program ended. For once and for a while, we had a fairly stable farm population, that supported the little towns in our country. We had a farm culture of shared work. Differences in political and social issues didn't matter much when our economy was stable, but now matter absolutely. The community is polarized because we have lost our shared culture. In spite of 40 years or so of a local food movement and our close proximity to urban markets, we are losing farms and farmers at a terrifying rate. I think I heard in the Kansas State song that you never hear a discouraging word here. No, seldom here. Anyway, it's going to get much more hopeful in just a minute. I was asked to write a foreword to a book published in 1990, so that year has been on my mind lately. My youngest child, Tanya, was born in February of that year, and my grandfather, John Berry Sr., turned 90 the following November. He would die the next year at 91. My grandfather was a lawyer and a farmer who served land-conserving communities all his life. He was the principal author of the Burley Tobacco Program. My daughter was born onto a farm and into a way of life that would not have existed without the work of her great-grandfather. In the 28 years since her birth, that way of life has virtually disappeared. And maybe most importantly, in relation to our work at the Berry Center, my husband, Steve Smith, started the first CSA in Kentucky in 1990. We then thought it an historical event that would begin the change we needed. His accounting shared publicly proved that a farmer could make more per acre by raising vegetables than could be made on tobacco. He and I talk often of our attempts to keep farming without tobacco, which we did successfully. However, we believed all those years ago that our entrepreneurial work was to keep making farm payments, while we naively, it turned out, believed that there would be a local food system that farmers would soon join. My father says that his father did the important work, and he and his brother, John Berry Jr., just took it up. My brother Den and I have now taken it up at the Berry Center. That work was and is to put a sustaining economy under good farming. We are working to ask and answer what seem to me to be the most important questions of our time. How can farmers afford to farm well? How do we become a culture that supports good farming? We have a local food movement in full swing that has bypassed farmers. Farmers are offered two choices right now in American agriculture: either small and entrepreneurial or large and industrial, with almost nothing in the middle. After some initial excitement about local production for local markets in the late 80s and early 90s, most farmers in our area have given up on an unpredictable market they don't understand and don't trust. They need an organization in the middle to move product, consider parity pricing, protect them from overproduction, and take good husbandry into account. This was the work of the Burley Tobacco Program. What is left of a generational farm culture is cut off from the information it needs the most. Industrial agriculture, taking most of its information from the Farm Bureau, Extension, and agri-industrial corporations, is not helping farmers to free themselves from the people who could not care less what happens to them or their communities. The local food movement, coming mostly from urban places, doesn't know much or anything about farmers or the lives of farmers. It appears now that we can measure the success of the local food movement by how many people think that the situation for farmers is improving, when in fact it is not. Neither side of agriculture is working for farmers. Only 15% of us live in rural places now, and 0.75% of us farm. Very few of that small percentage are farming sustainably. My father heard a Kentucky farmer say in a meeting recently, "It is hard to make the right decisions on your farm when you are wondering who will be the next person to live in your house." If we agree that food is a cultural product, then we have to think about what has happened to the rural culture. The demand for well-raised local products going up has met the rural culture coming down. It seems to me that our work is to get hold of what is left of the old culture of thrift, husbandry, and neighborliness, and to strengthen it, to put an economy around good farming that values it. There are still young people who want to farm, who are inheritors of the old ways, and who are called to farm. Our work must relate specifically to a particular farmer on a particular farm. What will work well for him or her, for this farm, for this community? To help with this work, I've been in need of teachers and a vision for what I believe we are after. I've been lucky in both. The agriculture of Henry County, Kentucky declined a good deal in the years between my father's childhood and my own, but it was still pretty good when I was growing up. The farms in little towns still looked well tended. People's pride was in their homes, and it showed. When I started farming in 1981, a farmer who was raised near our farm showed up to help every day when we were harvesting our first crop of tobacco. I had to get a good deal older than I was then to realize what he was doing. He was offering himself to us to save us from mistakes that, with his help, we wouldn't have to make. That is the culture we need again, and what the young people who want to farm today, or now, must do without. I have been aware most of my life that the work of my family and others gave me something to come home to when I came home to farm in 1981. The operating principle of the Berry Center is the ancient proposal that we must love our neighbors as ourselves. The most obvious implication of that rule, if, as Daddy says, we don't get carried away by spirituality, is that neighbors should work together in mutual support of their economic life. The immediate, particular, and practical demands of a local economy lead us past the also necessary means of political protest and organization. We affirm entirely the thought that the first political necessity and the necessary test of political sincerity is to solve the local problems that most need solving, however small or humble those problems may seem to be. So this is how we've gone to work. The archive at the Berry Center, well, first of all, we have 4 programs at the Berry Center. The first being the archive at the center, and it's based on the life, work, and writings of John Berry Sr., John Berry Jr., and my father, Wendell Berry. We have a lending library for our community named for my mother, Tanya. We have absolutely no creativity when it comes to names. Not for children, not for anything else. I'm just going to give you a sketch of each to give Matthew some time to speak. The Agrarian Culture Center and Bookstore is our second program, which, among other things, is the home of a rural reading program called the Agrarian Literary League that is in its second year and with 350 participants this year. The Culture Center is where we celebrate the art of the commonplace. Our last exhibit featured my mother's stunning photographs from a hog killing in Henry County in 1979 called For the Hog Killing. Is that right? For the Hog Killing? Good. It's at this place I work, but I forgot to check that. We have used the Burley Tobacco Cooperative as a model to start Home Place Meat. The best farming left in Kentucky is livestock farming. The average herd is 27 cows. The cattle are well raised until weaning weight when they are sold into the industrial food system. Home Place Meat is processing at weaning weight when the calves are still nursing and are eating grass. The product we're selling is called roast veal. We are paying a parity price of $1.80 live weight to our farmers and are working with 10 farm families in Henry County, the average age being a little under 40, which makes them young in the world of farming. And the last program, which Matthew is going to take up, is the Wendell Berry Farming Program of Sterling College. I've had on my mind for a long time a story my father tells of 2 farmers, draft horse breeders, talking. One says to the other, "Will we ever get the horses back?" The answer, "We can get the horses back, but how are we going to get the people back?" West said in a commencement address years ago that the dominant major in colleges and universities has been upward mobility, and now it has to be homecoming. We started the berry farming program at a little college called St. Catherine in the geographic center of Kentucky. We had 4 good years there under the leadership of Dr. Leah Bayans, who is a part of the Ecospheric Studies project here. We had we had 4 graduates when the college took bankruptcy and closed a couple of years ago. This was not our fault, first of all. Hope, exactly. We began and let me also say, thanks to the Land Institute and our friend Bob Jensen, who's somewhere here, we were able to bring Dr. Bayans to the Berry Center as a staff person for a year to work on the program, to work with my father, to work with all of us as we were getting ready to move forward. So when St. Catherine closed and it was made public, colleges and universities called from the Northeast, from the Southwest, from the South, from the Midwest, and all over Kentucky. And I began meeting with college and university presidents. This I did not enjoy. I did not find... And if I thought this... is there a college president in this audience? Well, yeah, you. This began I now have a closely held prejudice. This is live streamed, isn't it? Against university and college presidents, although I'm sure there are many good ones. So after months of talking to people who had no idea what I was talking about, but who did have a small collection of brand new books written by my father, and who did, in fact, agree with every single thing he'd ever written, which I can't even say I do, I heard from President Matthew Derr, who had been told to contact me by our friend Fred Kirschman. I'm sure many people here know who I'm talking about. So Matthew, I believe, emailed and then called the center and said he would like to visit. And I said to my colleagues, and there's no way I'm going to partner with a school in Vermont, but he can come on if he wants to. Well, he did come. And his idea was that the Wendellberry Farm Program could and should be in Henry County, Kentucky. That we could and should use Henry County, Kentucky as a classroom. And indeed, we have used Henry County as a classroom. We have gotten started, and I'm going to leave it to Matthew to take that up. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. I just want to echo Mary's gratitude for the opportunity to be at the Land Institute, and while this might be my first Prairie Festival, I have a feeling it won't be my last. And Fred, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about what I think is among the most radical and transformational ideas in agricultural education that we have seen in a very long time. It's been a pleasure over the course of the past year. As some of you know from the Land Report, Wes was our commencement speaker at Sterling last year. And by the way, I know there's a Sterling in Kansas. I've heard that a few times while I've been here. I'm from Vermont. Because if you go to those 2 websites, you're going to find 2 very different institutions. But we were lucky enough to have Wes come out, and one of the things, of course, Wes says when he sees anything that seems, I think, at some level inspiring and hopeful is, of course, he reminds you that if your work can be done in your lifetime, your work's not ambitious enough. And there is something deeply satisfying about being at Sterling College in Vermont. When any of us leave, we tease that we're leaving the Shire. There is an opportunity for some satisfaction in being at home. But we also believe that the ideas that the college promotes are important ideas, but that the college is right-sized for the place it inhabits. And some of what I want to describe about Sterling College is something that we obviously hope to, in place and in partnership with the Berry Center, bring to Henry County. The mission of the college is environmental stewardship, which we struggle with definitions in higher education, but for Sterling that simply means love of place. A deep and abiding love of place with a mission that inspires lifelong environmental stewardship through experiential liberal arts education that prepares its students to be knowledgeable, skilled, and responsible leaders in the communities in which they live. We look at the liberal arts through the lens of ecology, and we look at how humans adapt natural systems to meet their needs through agriculture and food systems. And we look at the way humans are inspired to interpret their relationship with the natural world through the humanities and through the arts. And we look at the way in which humans educate other people, other humans, about the natural world without harming it through outdoor education. That is the sum of our curriculum. There are only 5 majors. There are no departments. And to the degree that our faculty are known as expert and faculty, they are known by their first names and by what they teach and their relationships with their students, not by rank. It is a very different academic culture than one finds, and by necessity, it is small. We have a sophisticated curriculum that's based on understanding limits, understanding rationing, understanding that, in fact, growth and social mobility in the 21st century need to be addressed by higher education through a different process of education and through a different mission and using essentially nature and community as the measure. We have 110 students, 15 faculty, a deeply experiential pedagogy, which means all those loans that colleges and universities take out for buildings, we don't have to do that. We actually just walk and go outside. We do have buildings, but they're few and far between. We have essentially a practitioner faculty, some with PhDs and some without, most who have a different kind of experience in the disciplines from which they've come to Sterling. We're one of only 9 federal work colleges. That means that behind every student is a deep and abiding commitment to work and being in community and what work means to creating and a sustaining community. And that's regardless of financial need. Through that work, we raise about and grow about 30% of the food that we consume in our dining hall, and most of the rest of it comes within 250 miles. Students get up early. I eat breakfast with the entire college at 7:30 in the morning. That's after chores. And we have something called Country Midnight in Craftsbury Common, which is 9 p.m. You might have that here too. I think if I took a poll in this room, you'd have perceptions of private liberal arts colleges in New England. And one of the things that I want to make sure that you leave this barn with is an appreciation for one of the other characteristics of Sterling that makes it quite different. And that is that about 62% of our students qualify for Pell Grants. And the cost of a Sterling education starts at about 20% less than most liberal arts colleges in New England. We are deeply committed to providing access for all of the reasons that we think it is important to have ecologically minded people and farmers in the communities in which they'll live. The campus is located in a collection of stately, some beautiful but undistinguished white clapboard houses in the small village of Craftsbury Common. I think Wes said he drove by twice before he found the campus. There are no gates. We're not built on a monastic model of education. We are part of the community in which we live, and we are using that community as our classroom. And it is mutually beneficial to both community and college. So I lead one of the smallest colleges in America, located in the least populated corner of the least populated state in America. If there's anybody here from Wyoming, I always get that debate. And I think if you take the summer people out of Vermont, we're smaller. So why would a Vermont college establish this relationship with the Berry Center? Well, it's because it's had a relationship with Wendell Berry since its inception, really. In 1978, Sterling decided that environmental stewardship was its mission, and that mission was informed by many voices, but none more so than the voice found in The Unsettling of America. And so for our students and for our faculty, that sense of connection and history is deep and long. Vermont has an interesting history, too, in coming up with ideas that it promotes elsewhere. It's such a tiny state, but it gave you John Derr, who was born in Rutland, Vermont in 1804. I have the same passion for history that Wes has. And I want to work a little bit of in there because, of course, he left Vermont so that he could go in a straight line. It's harder to go in a straight line in Vermont. Justin Morrill, who was born in Stratford, Vermont in 1810, of course, the namesake of the Morrill Act, who gave us the land-grant universities and the extension divisions. And, of course, John Dewey, educational reformer. All of that says that Vermont has had something of a role in the way agriculture looks today, historically. And as we have developed this partnership, we've looked to the kinds of rationale that bring us together to think about what is important in educating farmers in the next 50 years. Sterling alumni live in rural places. About 20% of our students are from Vermont, and about 45% of our alumni live in Vermont. 90% of our alumni report that they're doing what they studied. That's a remarkable outcome. So what if we applied some of what we've been inspired by through Wendell Berry's writing and some of what we know from Vermont in Henry County? We know that we need farmers who know how to build soil and who know how to build community. And we think the liberal arts are an important aspect of their education as well as their education as farmers. And if you stop and think for just a moment about how many conservatories of music and art schools we have in this country, it's remarkable. And in fact, my background was in conservatory education for a very long time. And what I find fascinating about the future of this program, the Wendell Berry Farming Program, is that it brings that same opportunity for working with a discerned population, people who have decided that they want to be farmers, that's the highest aspiration in their personal and professional lives. So in partnership with the Berry Center, many of the things I've described about Sterling are certainly our aspirations, but it's a little bit different. It'll be an accredited degree in agriculture offered by Sterling College in Henry County. It'll be the final 2 years of college, so 5 semesters in whole, starting with a summer and ending in a spring. And 100% of the students will be transfer students, of course. They will come from other institutions where, either by what they've been exposed to or not yet exposed to, have discerned that they hope to be farmers, that they hope to live in rural agrarian places. It'll be place-based, it'll be experiential, it'll be a faculty of local practitioners. It'll be, much like Sterling, not campus-based, but community-based for about 50 students. And what Mary and I are spending our time doing right now is making sure that it's tuition-free. The students will work for their room and board, and that they won't be required to take out student loans. in doing that, we need to raise $30 million by the end of this talk.
That's not true.
We'll stick around for a while. But we see a triple benefit in the way that we've designed this educational model. One is that the value of an investment, of an endowment, can happen responsibly. That's the connection to Sterling and divestment. The second is that it can actually produce the revenue, the income, in order to make the education accessible to all those who've discerned that they want to farm and want to live in Henry County or want to live in Kentucky or want to farm in a place that is connected deeply to their aspiration for the future. But then we can also use that same asset a third way, which is to help them to get on land. They'll use that asset to work with local lenders and donors to actually make that transition happen, right? The transition, using the conservatory as the example again, there's enormous support for a musician getting into the right position within the right orchestra, within the right chamber music opportunities, within their professional life. There's a mentorship and guidance that helps them navigate a complex and challenging world, and we need that for farmers. And this relationship and this partnership and this history and legacy are really fertile soil for us to build on. And so we're really excited about this next phase of development. As Mary said, we had 12 Sterling students in Henry County not too long ago. I believe that they made a good impression, but I can't wait to go back to Newcastle, Kentucky and see 50 students in that town working on those farms, getting to know those generational farmers, and moving in and creating their own homecoming. So, thank you.
That was very well done, Matthew.
Back at you, Mary. We've done this a few times.
I think we have some time for questions. Yes?
Well, I would like to know if Bernie Sanders knows about what you're doing. He says his proposals are exciting and wonderful, but my gosh, can we pay for it?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, what you're building is the kind of thing you might have in mind.
Yeah.
Do you know about it?
I don't think he has agriculture in mind, but I'm going to turn this over to the Vermonter.
Well, we've
He
turned
does
Bernie
need
over
to.
to you, so well, we tried. Right. Well, that's right. And I think that one of the things that happens as a result of the work colleges is that we get to get in front of Bernie and Patrick pretty regularly to talk about this idea. But what's also beneficial is that as a work college, we're also sister colleges to Berea in Kentucky and quite a few colleges. And all of us are talking about what the impact is on student loan debt for students. And not in the sense of that upward mobility that we were talking about in the 20th century, but really the impact it's going to have on the social good that they can provide to society going forward.
And I'm going to need this to explain this to Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul. I know. I know. I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right back here, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Catholic sisters, we have 1,000 acres of land we've owned since 1840, and we have a house, just 2 lots. My question is, what about these work students? How does that work with federal government, work colleges?
Well, the work colleges it's just a small consortium of schools who've determined that work and service should be an integrated part of the education. It does sound familiar to you, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah.
The leadership conference of women religious, you might have heard of when the Pope is after us. As a newsletter out just now that I'm reading the other day, and it talks about leadership in the
Well,
Thank you.
we philosophers also need to eat and eat
Right.
good food, and they're going to need farmers to be able to do that. Yeah,
There's a question right over here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah.
I live in town 600 in Kansas, and I like what you're doing, but I'm trying to think of how this is working in our area, where there's probably 10 farmers, and they have 2 farms. They're not looking to sell their land, they're looking to make bigger farms. If somebody came in and wanted to buy the land, it's too expensive.
Well,
Get the funding to become a farmer. In our area, the only way you can become a farmer is to be a family unit. When you marry into it.
in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, as in our part of Kentucky, first of all, the farther away you get from Louisville, the lower the land prices, first of all. So and they're in small parcels still, thanks to that program that I spoke of earlier. 100 acres is the average size of a farm in Kentucky. So there is hope that a young person could afford a farm in our area with the sort of help that we're building into our work with the Wendellberry Farming Program. When, I'm sure we're about ready to go, right? And when I was a young person and bought a farm in Henry County, we paid close to $1,500 an acre at a low rate, because we were beginning farmers, of 9% interest. So now land prices in Henry County, Kentucky, are around $3,000 an acre at, has been rock bottom interest. The difference is we had a program that meant when we went in to borrow money, we could say, this is our tobacco base, and they would say, you can make a payment. So you see the economic, I think the economics are not that different. The difference is we don't have any stable farm economy.
And
So-
I want to add that
I think we're done.
We're
But go
done?
ahead. Do it quick.
But it'll be no more questions for this panel.
the desire to have this program launch in Kentucky has obviously influenced its design. It's place-based. The solution you would come up with in Kansas would be different. It might evolve from land ownership to some kind of other means of getting young farmers onto land. So I like the idea of let 1,000 or 100 flowers bloom. I think we need more programs like the one that we just described in Vermont and in Kentucky, in other places, but they're going to have to be informed by the needs of those communities and the circumstances of the place. So I hear your question. Yeah.